Welcome to Wiki's Round 5 NRL preview for NRL Fantasy and NRL Supercoach. I'm going to sort of try to make this a short and sharp version, maybe sort of 20 to 30 minutes. I'll probably drag it on a little bit too much with a lot to talk about, to be fair, in the early rounds. So I'll just do a really quick intro on our company, what we do, and obviously appreciate your support so far this season. I'll get straight into my teams and how they've been doing, then get into team changes. And then to finish off with sort of trends around price changes, captaincy, and everything else for both NRL Supercoach and NRL Fantasy. So firstly, guys, obviously our company is called Wiki. This is our Linktree, which has links to everything that we do. Got all our social media links here. Obviously, I'm doing this podcast, which will be on YouTube and also on Spotify. So if you could, make sure you check it out and obviously share it across to your friends. Obviously helps us because we do everything that we do for free for you guys. So obviously, follow us at Discord. Discord, if you don't know, by the way, is just like a big group chat. We had, I think, a couple hundred people in there last year. Now we're up to almost 500. So, and a lot of that growth has just been in the last week, which has been nuts. So obviously, if you could follow us or join that, that'd be awesome. Also, this will all be updated, but we do a bunch of fantasy and punting content. So we've got a punting article and the podcast here, an odds comparison tool. We've got the Draft Star Stats Bible. So we work with Draft Stars. They're Australia's only daily fantasy sports company. So it's essentially a paid version of Fantasy or Supercoach. Really good fun. If you're interested, obviously you could join through here. And what I'm doing right now, we'll go on to here. We'll update this round 5 links. But yeah, now just a quick note, actually, if you're into your cricket, the IPL starts this weekend. We're not only an NRL punting and fantasy podcast, and company, but we also cover cricket as well. So we'll update all this stuff with IPL links. By the time that you see this video, it'll be nice and updated. So if you just Google Wiki Linktree, you'll find this page and it'll have everything that you need to see from our company. Getting straight into it, guys. I'm going to rush through the team changes a little bit. I realize I've been spending way too much time on this every week. But yeah, first game, Thursday night, 8 o'clock, Roosters, Eels. It's going to be so good. This game is set up perfectly. So like, I think the Eels still, unfortunately, their forward pack's a bit stuffed. They're missing Junior Bolo now, as you can see here. Manu's missing for the Roosters though. So I'm expecting this to be a really tight game. Both teams will be desperate. Roosters coming off the bye. Eels have had a really rough start to the year, but they beat the Panthers last week, so they'll be really fired up. This game is going to be a coin flip. Going to be really good fun to watch. I'm actually considering potentially captaining Hopgood. He did really well last week. I think he got 70 in NRL Fantasy, and that was with Bowler on the team. So I think with the Maddo's going to have to play some middle, but aside from that, it's just RCG and Hopgood, the big minute middle players. I'm actually considering captaining Hopgood in NRL Fantasy. Aside from that, not too much to note. Teddy's going to be pretty cheap. If you don't have him, you might want to pick him up in a week or so. But aside from that, I think I'm happy to move on from here. Raiders, Panthers, Fogarty's back in for Whiten. I don't think that should affect too many people. Rapana's back in on the wing as well from suspension. For the Panthers, so Garner and Luke are out, which will probably mean that Mitch Kenny should play most of the game at hooker. Garner and Liam Martin are both out, so Zach Hosking holds on to his spot. He obviously had a huge score last week. I personally don't understand why he's so popular. Like, yes, Garner's had a hot and cold start to the year. I don't necessarily think this is now just Hosking's spot to lose. Liam Martin's still missing, so that therefore Hosking and Sorensen are playing on the edges. I think it's quite realistic to think that 2-3 weeks from now, Hosking either goes into like a job share rotation with Liam Martin, Hosking, and Garner. And even if Hosking does start, it could be a scenario where he kind of like, plays 80 minutes one game, 60 minutes the other, and like, averages sort of like that awkward 60 to 70 minutes, which might still make him good value, but it's just like a lot of uncertainty around him, especially for Supercoach when he's only played one game. I think it's silly to trade him in where you can just have a look to see if he plays next week or not, whether he starts or not, whether he gets a good score or not. A lot of things that you can weigh up. But anyways, I'll move on before I go on for too long with the team list again. Rabbitohs Storm, another cracking game. I think Hame Saleh is back in for the Rabbitohs. And Storm are pretty much unchanged. Last game for Pezzett before Hughes comes back in. So be wary of that. Please don't trade him in. He's going to be out of the team and at best going to get a bench role from next week. Katoa's been on fire, so if you don't have him already, I think it might be too late to get him with so many other value players around, to be honest. but we'll move on from there. Manly and the Knights. So Cooler, the right centre for Manly, he's out. Morgan Harper plays his first game for the season. Kurt Mann, concussion, he's out. Jack Johns starting. Nothing really to note. Obviously, Tom Turbo's had a great season. He had a low score last week, but sorry, not had a great season, but he started the season really well, but he had a quiet score last week, so watch out there. The whole Knights backline pretty much had an absolute field day in terms of like stats and fantasy output, aside from Heimel Hunt. They're still a super weak team though this year. I reckon they'll be a bottom 4 team. Their pack is in a lot of trouble with injuries, suspensions, HIAs, whatever, but they're also missing Ponga for a few weeks at least, you'd think. Like Marju, I brought him into I think one or maybe even both of my draft competitions, which is awesome. But I don't know if I'd be bringing any of these guys into overall team. Aside from Lockie Miller, he's available at fullback and centre wing and Supercoach, and he's a really good winger fullback option, and he's doing the goal kicking at the moment as well for the Knights. I think he could be a good option. Aside from that, I wouldn't weigh up too much for the Knights there. Dragons, Dolphins, DeBellin's on an extended bench. If he comes in, Bird could end up switching into the edge for a little bit instead of in the middle lock there. Interesting one to look out for. O'Sullivan is out with Katoa Milford down the half for the Dolphins. And Tessie New off the wing, he's out for about a month or so with Jack Bostock, the rookie, coming in. Wouldn't be trading him in just yet. I think you definitely want to see how he goes for at least a week or maybe even 2. And then, yeah, Marshall King's back in for the Dolphins. Broncos, Tigers. Most people expected this to be a cricket score. Tigers have been struggling to start the year. He was a popular trade out last week, and I think he is again this week. I think there's just no reason to keep him in your team at the moment. Like, he's playing at fullback compared to in the halves. Like, his injury, or he still played okay last week. I just think there's no upside with Dewey at the moment. So I think you could, potentially wait till he gets over his injury. So the Tigers maybe have a couple of soft games or get some form going with their big name recruits, but it's not just yet. So I think it's fine to trade him out. Team changes, nothing major for either team. Sharks, Warriors. Nico Hines. I brought him into my Supercoach side and captained him last week, which was, obviously like super satisfying. I'll go into that a bit later. But didn't bring him into NRL Fantasy. He scored 118 Supercoach and like 96 or 98 in Fantasy. I think like the reasonable or sensible thing to do is wait a week if you don't have him in already, because they've got the bye next week. It's just so tempting to just plug him in and captain him against the Warriors. 4 p.m. game on Sunday. I don't think there's meant to be any rain in Sydney by Sunday. Super tempting. Going to be really interesting to see what people do there. Aside from that, though, Trindle's back in, but he's on the bench. I think it's fine to keep him in your fantasy team to get one last price rise out of him. But if you do need to trade him, that's okay as well. Like, he's not going to make a lot more money now on the bench. Oregon Kafusi, concussion, he's out. Tamara Martin's out for a week, I think, as well. But Wade Egan's back. If you already had Wade Egan, well done. Good on you. I wouldn't obviously be trading him out or anything, and it's good that he's back. But yeah, I think he scored 3 tries in his first 3 games this season, which is not repeatable for a hooker, so definitely wouldn't be trading him in. And Jackson Ford, great buy in NRL Fantasy at 383k. And Supercoach is a pretty good buy as well, but I think there might be other priorities for a lot of Supercoach players. Last game of the round, Dogs Cowboys. The Cowboys are missing Drinkwater, Cotter, Nanai, Talangi, and I think 1 or 2 other players. Like, that's a lot of quality players. Tamo and Shibsaki, obviously, like depth guys, but they're missing a lot of players, and the Dogs are full strength pretty much in terms of what they can do, with a couple of middles missing, but they're not going to be back for a while. And it's in Sydney as well. Like, I think this is going to be a really close game. From a fantasy point of view, Preston, hopefully you've had him because he's been making a ton of money. And for the Cowboys, Lukey's unfortunately only going to have that starting spot potentially for 2 weeks, and he hasn't lost a lot of money, so it's a little bit of a tricky buy. Could be a good pickup in draft for a lot of you guys. But I think if you don't have him already, don't bring in Chester, don't bring in Elliott. They're also short-term guys in that Cowboys team, unfortunately. But yeah, that's it for team changes. I've been trying to be a bit more succinct and sort of wrap through these a little bit quickly. Let's get into my team. So yeah, not so humble brag, guys. I had a really, really good week last week. In NRL Fantasy, I was already ranked, I think, 200 or 300s maybe. Scored just over 1,000, as you can see, which I was really, really happy about. I don't feel guilty bragging about this stuff because historically I've played NRL Fantasy and Supercoach for about 2010 or 11, so like comfortably over 10 years. And I've always tried to like overthink the start of the competition. Whereas this year I've just gone bang, I want to start really, really strongly. And whoever the best sort of like, instead of looking for a lot of mid-range or value picks, I've just gone for like a guns and cheapies approach pretty much. And you can see my team last week. I had Haas captain, brought in Cleary and Burton, I think from memory. Burton didn't do amazingly, but 44 is okay. And Cleary, obviously, 78 was great. And my captain Haas got 70, which was also good. Aside from that, I played around my backs a little bit, but in the end got AKP, Khan Pereira, and Warbrick. They both got 64, and they're both scoring players for me. And I don't think anyone did poorly. Like Bird and Alamotti got 30s, but that's okay. But generally, really good, consistent week. Got the captaincy decision pretty much right. Really, really happy with this team. And now I'm ranked 77, which I'm super, super happy about. It's going to be a really interesting period over the next few weeks, though. So I traded David Fafita out and someone else to get Burton Cleary in, which seemed like a bit of a risk, and I understand that, but I just had such a stacked like forward pack with my mids and edge players that I thought it was all right to sacrifice Fafita because he was going to go on the bye, which obviously he is now in round 5. And going forward, I've got some tough decisions to make. Like I really just want to bring Hines in and captain him against the Warriors this week. It's not the sensible thing to do. And it also will mean that I'll have to bring in Hands. I forgot his name. I think it's Brandon Hands from memory. But yeah, I'm going to have to bring Hands in as the second guy to cover Boyd because I've got no other hookers in my squad. So it's a really like sort of short-term minded move to make. But I just love my team with Hines and Hands. Hands is dual hooker and half, just like Tanner Boyd. So he'll be like able to cover the hooker position if Boyd's injured or whatever, or gets concussed just for 1 week. I don't expect Hands got like 44 points in NRL Fantasy, including a try. I don't expect anything close to that in future weeks. But if he can get even 20, like if he can even average 20 points and just plug in with a 20 to 25 score like this week when I need him, I'm okay with that. He's cheap as chips. He's hooker half, like dual position. He's basically like a cash out that'll help me out for a couple of weeks. And if that enables me to get Hines in this week, even though he's on the bye the week after, I'm talking myself into it. But I think I'm ranked 77. I've never done this well to start the season, and I just don't want to let go. So it will mean, by the way, that if I want Hines in, I'm going to have to trade out Carrigan. Carrigan he's done decently well. I think he's averaging like 55 or 60. There you go. He's averaging 59, but he's highly owned and doesn't have much of a ceiling. Whereas Hines is going to be relatively low owned, given that he only started playing last week, and obviously has the much better ceiling. And the other guy that I'm sacrificing is probably like a Trindle, who obviously isn't going to be sort of making much money or isn't going to be playing pretty much from now on. So yeah, anyways, that's one approach. For people that are considering trading in Hines, I think in like Supercoach, given that there's so many trades and it's a lot easier to sort of make your teams up, I think it's fine to just get him in. Whereas fantasy, like you really have to think twice. And I think if you do bring him in, you pretty much have to captain him, don't you? Like against the Warriors at 4 p.m. But anyways, that'll be a really interesting decision. But yeah, just to finish off, really, really happy with this team. I think it's gonna mean if I do bring Hines in, I'm also gonna have to bloody play Heimel Hunt, Warbrick, and Reece Walsh as my 3 winger fullbacks, which I'm not super chuffed about, especially with the Knights playing Manly and Hunt's what's he been averaging, like 22. Yeah, it's not inspiring. But anyways, I'll make a decision and obviously you'll see how I go in the next little bit. I think if you're part of the wiki open league for NRL Fantasy, it's a pretty tight race up the top. I'm 77th. I think we've got one or two guys higher than me, which yeah, shows how close it is. Just quickly, NRL Fantasy. So footystatistics.com or NRLfantasystats.com I keep saying this every week, best site to go through NRL stats and data, especially for fantasy. You can see here, like I'm doing this video at, I think about 1 p.m. on Wednesday, Sydney time. Hosking, Hines, Ford, and Hands. I think I just stopped there and really like just discussed those four. So Hosking, I personally think, I think it's silly. Like if you are going to bring him in, you kind of have to bring him in this week before his price gets ridiculous after another week. But I just think with Hines, Ford, and Hands, you've got three options that are excellent. Like Hines, huge ceiling, coming off a big score. Yes, he's got the bye next week, but he's going to be most likely going up in price again. And it's going to be really hard to bring him in later. And if you don't want him, Ford 383k dual position, 380. Oh, sorry, like under 400k dual position, and going to be going up a lot of money. And Tony Harris could be out. Like his job security is looking a lot better than it did a week or two ago. And then Hands dual position, cheapy, could plug into your hooker and half for the odd week to score 20-ish if you need him. Like I think that's three good options. Lemuelu should have the edge backer for at least the next 3 weeks. There's a really good. Also, if you're training Chester, that's silly. Chester and Pezzett, just don't do it. Weeks as a utility on the bench. Like these three are just silly. But aside from that, there's some really good options out there that I think Hosking personally, I won't be trading him in, and I think it's silly to trade him in when Martin and Garner aren't in the team or in the squad, and they could potentially be starting next week, and Hosking could be benched. People trading to Harris out. He plays on Sunday, which is really irritating because he could be a late out. But at the moment, he's named to start, so I think that could be a really silly trade out if he does end up playing. Garner, yeah, got hooked / injured last week and isn't even named in the squad, so fair enough, you're trading him out. Nano's out for a couple of weeks, fair enough. Boyd's just on his bye, and I think he got 52 points last week and his dual position hooker half. Like I don't see why you trade him out. Cooler's out for a month, so fair enough. Martin could be out short term. I don't know why people had him in the first place, but he should be back next week. So find that interesting. Dewey, if you held him last week, you should just hold him now. Like I don't understand why you're trading him out unless it's to facilitate a big Nico Hines push, which I understand. Sonny Luke was a silly buy in the first place, so that's fair enough. Moving on to captaincy. So I think this is really interesting. So last week's captaincy was, Cleary, Grant. That was like they were by far the two most popular. Grant didn't do so well, and obviously Cleary did with 78, so fair enough. I think Hopgood is an excellent captaincy option for this week. He's only scored poorly in 1 week. I don't exactly know what happened that week, but now they've lost Junior Bolo. So like Madison's going to have to play some time on the edge, some on the middle. But then that kind of leaves Hopgood to play 70 to 80 minutes in a close game against the Roosters. So yeah, if I don't bring in Hines, Hopgood will be my captain. Can't go wrong with Haas. And obviously Hines, if you bring him in, you're probably going to captain him against the Sharks. Sorry, I don't think Carrigan's got upside, so I don't necessarily love him. But aside from that, nothing too bad there. Yeah, obviously almost everyone would have Hopgood. A lot of people would have Cartwright, Preston. Cheekham's been the surprising one. They're going to get a few of their forwards back. I don't think he's worth trading in, but well done if you started with him. Well done if you've got Tabio Fidel in his centers as well. Brimson and who's the other player? Brimson and Foran both got injured. Both the Titans halves got injured last week. Campbell, they've got the bye this week, but when Campbell is back, he'll be starting at fullback. And he's lost almost 200k. So I think he's one to consider, but I think he only gets 2 or 3 weeks, which is probably not enough for him to make a lot of money. Hudson Young's had 260 plus scores. So he's one to consider. But they're playing the Panthers. And yeah, I just don't know how good that's going to be, to be honest, but at least one to consider. Cool. All right, to finish off with, I'll quickly go through Supercoach. So yeah, I had a very crap start to my Supercoach season. I think I was ranked like 60,000. But what I think is incredible is, yeah, okay, fine. I brought in Hines and I captained him. That obviously paid off. I won't go on about that. But what I thought was awesome was I went from 60,000 to 9,000 in 1 week. A season rank change of 51,000 ranks in 1 week. So I think early on in the season, if you're not doing so well, which I obviously wasn't, like in NRL Fantasy, I've done well pretty much from round 1, which has been great. It's been good fun. But NRL Supercoach, I was doing absolutely crap for the first few weeks. And then bang, like I came 622nd for the round, went up 50k ranks in 1 week. It just shows that I think 2 weeks, you have 2 good weeks in a row, and you can very easily jump 10, 20, 30K ranks early in the season. So I think, and obviously there's the origin weeks when a lot of people give up. Head-to-head guys maybe don't do their teams and their trades. And there's a good opportunity to go up the ranks. But yeah, like don't be disheartened basically if you've got a low rank. And I'm still only like 9,000, so it's not like I'm doing that well at the moment either. But I'm hoping with Hines in my team, and I think I've made a couple of other sort of like upgrades or high risk players. If they pay off, I could shoot into the top sort of 5,000 or so. But we'll see how that goes. Going to classic players. So looking at the top 10% of coaches. I think some of the more popular this is definitely wrong. Like there's no way 45% of people have traded off Luma, but I think a lot of people trading in Hines definitely makes sense in Supercoach. But I might skip these numbers because these don't look right. Captaincy for this round, Hines 50%, Turbo 20%, Grant. Why is Will Kennedy being captain? I thought that was interesting. He is averaging 71. I get that. I get that they're playing the Warriors, but yeah, I just don't understand why you wouldn't just go Hines instead. Nothing really too interesting. What I do think is interesting though is with your vice captain. I think it's really important to if you are bringing Hines and captaining him, I think it's like crucial to go a high ceiling player as your vice captain. Like you don't want to go a Pat Carrigan or even a Payne Haas, to be honest. I think you want to go back if possible. Try to take a bit of a risk on that vice captain, because if your vice captain goes nuts and gets like a 130, 140 plus type of score, then you lock in that with the vice captaincy loophole, avoid captaining Hines. And if Hines does get just a 70 or an 80, that is a huge, like you're basically putting up a huge gap against the big majority of people that are captaining Hines. So I forgot what I've done with my team. Yeah, so I've got Reece Walsh against the Tigers, which I'm really, really excited about. So Reece Walsh, where is he? Broncos Tigers, yeah. So if Reece Walsh goes, like he's already averaging 94, which is incredible for this season, by the way. But let's just say he gets 140 against the Tigers, which is very it's possible against a poor Tigers outfit. Broncos are $1.13 favorites, right? So Reece Walsh goes bang, and then I lock in my captaincy, vice captaincy loophole, and then don't captain Hines and captain, Kyle Pereira or whatever instead. That to me is a pretty impressive move. And then obviously I'm not wishing injury on anyone, but if Hines gets a HIA and niggle early in the game, or just has a quiet game for whatever reason, and the Warriors put up a big fight, and then Hines ends up on like an 80 or a 90, gets a couple of try assists, and that's it. That's huge, right? But on the other side, if I captain like a vice captain like a Haas, a Carrigan, or a Robson, and they get like a 105, that's still a really good score for them, but it's not really going to help me with my Hines captain. Like that vice captaincy option isn't really helping me. Just one to look out for. I'll finish off with players traded in and out. So traded out, Duehi. Again, I think you should have probably traded him out last week, but if that's enabling a Hines move, that's fair enough. Murray has a relatively poor start to the year, and I think that's fair enough if you're trading him out. Walker doesn't make sense. Like he just came off his bye. I think that's a little bit silly, but again, I assume it's part of the part of facilitating a Hines trading, which is fine. I think Boyd's been okay without being amazing in Supercoach. That's fair enough. Trimble, fair enough as well. Tohu Harris, I look out for the late mail to see if he does play. Cotter's still going to be missing a fair few weeks. It's fair enough. And Garner makes sense. He's injured and left out of the team. Traded fair enough with Hines. Let's see if this stuff works. So top 10% of players, that number change. Let's have a look at the top 10% of players. So Hines, Ford, Schuster makes sense. Peasant is just stupid. Hughes comes back in next week. That makes no sense at all. Hoskins, a huge risk in Supercoach when you get one more free look at him and he's 458K. Like he could be a great cash cow and a long-term gun, but there's just no point when his price isn't going to change. So I think Peasant makes no sense. It's stupid because he's not going to be playing from next week. Hosking, I think you definitely would want to wait in Supercoach. And the other one I don't get is Tino's younger brother. Yes, he scored well, but he's he's going on to a bye, and he's probably only going to get like 20, 30 minutes long term. So there's some interesting decisions to make for sure, but I think there's some obvious mistakes that you could probably avoid. But yeah, that's it, guys, for the fantasy and Supercoach review for round 5. Again, just to say it again, I guess, but like our socials are right here. All the links for NRL round 5 will be updated by the time that you see the video. But aside from that, all the best for your fantasy and Supercoach teams. If you've got any questions, join our free Discord, ask us on there, and from next week, I'll make sure that I get a Q&A going for both the punting and the fantasy shows. Good luck, guys, and I'll chat to you next week.